Hi, welcome back to the channel. This is episode 4. Episode 4, we're going to be talking about running away. You can call it retreating, parry 10, get the hell out, whatever. But we're talking about retreating, and I like to call it running away. Now, George Silver had a great term for it. He called it flying out. And in his writings, he would say, after you've stepped in and struck at your opponent, once you've scored upon your opponent, you should fly out, usually under the cover of a parry, true gardant, or what have you. And I agree with that. And so there are really two times that I would emphasize running away, or as George Silver would call it, flying out. The first is when you are set up and you just feel that something is amiss, something's wrong, things aren't going to plan. Maybe you feel that your opponent has got a slight tactical advantage on you. Run away. Retreat. Back up. Take a step or two back, break range, break the fight, and reset so that you're more comfortable. Okay? Don't let your opponent dictate the pace of the fight or when the actual combat is going to occur. So if you're not happy with the way things are going in the fight, stop the fight, back up, get out of range. The second time is, as George Silver advises, after you've struck home and are fleeing the direct conflict that you've engaged in. In other words, you've stepped in, you've struck your opponent, but you're still within arm's reach of your opponent, you're still within weapons reach. You should fly out under the cover of a ward. And what that means is if you've struck your opponent, most systems utilize an afterblow to replicate a dying strike from your opponent. Or if you struck your opponent on the limb, your opponent might be able to follow through with their own strike because the remaining limbs aren't crippled. So if you're able to strike home, then I strongly recommend that you run away or fly out under a guard. And what I mean by that is don't simply retreat. Retreat while keeping an active defense in place, whether it's a ward, whether it's a guard, whether it's an active bind, opposition bind, or even a beat to knock your opponent's weapon offline as you're retreating away. But make sure that you get out of that area of conflict once you've struck. Also, keep in mind that you don't have to retreat directly backwards. It's the most comfortable way, a lot of times it's the most efficient way, but you can also retreat to the side if it takes you away from your opponent's weapon. Now I'm going to include a quick sparring video to close this out. It's a video where I fought my friend Edward, and kind of feel like I'm starting to pick on Edward because I use so much of my sparring footage with him, but it's really because when I fight him, I see a lot of good techniques that I like to point out. But I'm sparring with Edward here in cut and thrust, and I was using a single sword, and I was having him use a sword and a buckler, so that I was required to really utilize my movement more, and to make sure that I was guarding myself at all times, particularly when I was leaving engagement. So I'm going to insert a minute or so of our sparring footage so that you can see it for yourself. As always, if there are any questions, leave them in the comments below, and I'll try to follow up on them. Thanks. Very nice. Back time. Yeah.